Tonight on The Readout.
We're going to deliver. We're going to get the best people in the world. You know, we have the greatest business people in the world. We don't use them. We're going to use our smartest and our best. We're not using political hacks anymore. That's the people that do these deals. They're political hacks.
We want experts, our finest people. We don't want people that are B-level, C-level, D-level. We have to get our absolute best.
Trump hired all the best people. Now many of those same people, his former attorney general, defense secretary, national security advisor, and others, say he endangered national security. Also tonight, new reporting seems to answer the question as to why it took so long for the Justice Department to begin an investigation into Trump's plot to overturn the 2020 election. Plus, Republicans' loyalty pledge. They're basically asking all the presidential candidates to support Trump if he's nominated again. And probably pardon him, too. I'm Jason Johnson, in for Joy Reid, and we begin tonight with Justice Delayed. Today, of course, is Juneteenth, marking the day in 1865 when enslaved black people in Galveston, Texas, learned they were free, 2 months after the end of the Civil War, and more than 2 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. It took 150 years, constant work from local activists and the CBC, for people to recognize that Juneteenth needed to happen and that it should be a federal holiday. This is typical for a country that tends to take too much time to address its problems. We'll have more on that coming up. But speaking of justice delayed, it is ironic but fitting that on this day, according to a damning new report from the Washington Post, we're learning that in the face of a once-in-a-lifetime danger to our democracy posed by Donald Trump, the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI also delayed, allowing Trump's role in instigating the January 6th attack to go unscrutinized for more than a year. According to the Post, quote, a wariness about appearing partisan, institutional caution, and clashes over how much evidence was sufficient to investigate the actions of Trump and those around him all contributed to the slow pace. Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco charted a cautious course aimed at restoring public trust, Republicans, and the department, while some prosecutors below them chafed, feeling top officials were shying away from looking at evidence of potential crimes by Trump and those close to him. But the report notes that the delay in looking directly at Trump started in the period shortly after the attack on the Capitol. Quote, Acting U.S. Attorney Michael Sherwin, senior department officials Paul Abate, the top deputy to the FBI Director Chris Wray, quashed a plan by prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office to directly investigate Trump associates for any links to the terrorist attack, deeming it premature, according to 5 people familiar with the decision. Instead, they insisted on a methodical approach, focusing first on rioters and going up the ladder. The strategy was embraced by Garland, Monaco, and Wray. According to the Post, the leaders at both agencies held on to that ladder-up approach to avoiding Trump, even as evidence emerged that Trump and his allies had schemed to overturn the election weeks before their henchmen laid siege to the Capitol. That approach can be traced to Garland's desire to turn the page from missteps, bruising attacks, and allegations of partisanship in investigations into Russian interference and in the 2016 election and Hillary Clinton's emails. But the report added, inside justice, however, some have complained that the Attorney General's determination to steer clear of any claims of political motive has chilled efforts to investigate the former president. Quote, you couldn't use the T word, said one former justice official briefed on prosecutors' discussions. The Post also sheds new light on the ways the House January 6th committee may have forced DOJ's hand by investigating the scheme to install fake electors to deliver the election for Trump. News reports that the committee was looking into the matter, as well as exhaustive reporting by our colleague Rachel Maddow, inspired new urgency at Maine Justice. One person directly familiar with the DOJ's interest in the case told the Post it felt as though the department was reacting to the committee's work, as well as heightened media coverage and commentary. Only after they were embarrassed did they start looking, the person said. Joining me now to discuss is Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor, MSNBC legal analyst, and professor at Georgetown School of Law, and Elie Mystal, the Lewis Black of Politics and Justice, correspondent for The Nation, and author of Allow Me to Retort, a Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, available now in paperback. Paul Butler, I'm going to start with you. You were at Justice. Tell me, after you read this article, what the impact on an investigation could be when the head of the Department of Justice is basically saying, I want you to do this with 2 hands, 1 toe, and an ear tied behind your back.
When you slow walk an investigation of the former president for violations of national security that led to the worst attack on the U.S. Capitol since 1812, when you slow walk that investigation, you slow walk the rule of law. You slow walk justice. The U.S. Attorney's Office had teams investigating deaths that happened on January 6th and teams investigating the pipe bomb that had been planted near the Capitol and teams investigating groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. But DOJ officials at the very top made them slow walk the investigation of Trump, even his connections to people like Roger Stone, even though Roger Stone was tight with the Oath Keepers. He was tight with Donald Trump. So the Post says that prosecutors weren't even allowed to follow the money on how the insurrection was financed because of political concerns about who might be implicated. So, Jason, we'll never know all of the costs of this delay in terms of losing leads, emails, and text messages get deleted after 15 months, which is how long it took for the FBI to get seriously involved in focusing on Donald Trump. After 15 months, witness memories fade. But one cost is clear right now. If DOJ officials hadn't held Trump to this different standard, he would have been indicted months ago, not just for Mar-a-Lago, but also for January 6th. So ironically, in trying to rise above politics, Merrick Garland has enhanced the politics because now there's a federal prosecution of a presidential candidate smack in the middle of a presidential campaign.
Ellie, I just want your immediate reaction to this article. Just the core idea that Merrick Garland was basically, as Paul Butler saying, telling everybody to slow walk this. What was your first reaction having observed this entire process over the last 2 years?
My very first reaction was to quote the late, great Denny Green. They are who we thought they were. You want to crown them, but they are who we thought they were. And what we thought they were operating a 2-tier system of justice where, as they put in the report, they were going to start at the bottom, at the low-level people who couldn't defend themselves. Like, too many prosecutors are all about this, using the office, their incredible resources to put the screws to low-level people who can't defend themselves without having the courage to go after the top-level people that, in the January 6th case, order these MAGA barbecued sauced idiots to go attack the Capitol. They didn't want any bit of that. And I know this is difficult for Democrats to hear because we like institutions. We want to believe that good people are trying their best. But putting your faith into Garland, he's a mirage. You're drinking sand when you support this guy, because as we've seen in this report, and not just that, for his entire first year in office, let's say, what we saw is a person who was unwilling to do the work. Everybody knows that if you're a ref and you swallow the whistle and you don't call a foul, you're not being neutral. You're not being fair. You're helping the team that fouls. All right, I'm an old school Knicks fan. If you don't blow the whistle, you're helping Anthony Mason and Charles Oakley and Bill Laimbeer rough up everybody, right? If you blow the whistle fairly, that's being a neutral arbiter, and Merrick Garland never was willing to do that.
You know, Ellie, and here's, I want to follow this up, and I want to take this to Charles. I think this is really key. It's like, part of what was also discussed, and we see in the report, is that interviews were delayed for months. And some of that, Paul, was because there was difficulty in staffing, right? You had a new administration in, there were holds up with appointments and everything else like that. Some of the delay is because Republican resistance to filling the Department of Justice. The problem that I see with that as an excuse for the delays is when you see that the Republicans are specifically trying to stop you from staffing yourself to investigate, that should make you more aggressive, right? Not less aggressive? Or Paul, am I missing something? I'm not a lawyer.
You have it exactly right, Jason. And at this time, people in the military and Congress and the judiciary were pleading for an investigation. There were those 3 former generals who wrote in the Washington Post that DOJ needed to act urgently because if no leader was held accountable for January 6th, there would be another insurrection. The House panel, the chief investigator for the House panel, privately reached out to DOJ to alert them about what they were finding about how Trump had tried to pressure DOJ and Michael Pence to overturn the election. That fell on deaf ears. Then that federal judge, David Carter, said that Donald Trump and John Eastman had attempted to overthrow the government, that it was obviously illegal, and that DOJ needed to step up its responsibilities. Jason, none of that worked. It took almost 2 years.
You know, Ellie, I want to play you some sound by a pair of incredible analysts and get your thoughts on the other side. We have so much information here about what appears to be conspiracy. We have people sending text messages back and forth saying, hey, want to take over the government? Sounds cool. Let's do it. Legally, are there ways that we could be moving faster?
What I see is Congress, which has an oversight function, doing with all deliberate speed as quickly as they can, putting together a case. And I see the FBI doing nothing to go get these people. And that is my question, and that is my problem. And I think it all comes back to Joe Biden's decision to appoint Merrick Garland, a slow-moving institutionalist, to the Department of Justice.
Now, Ellie, the guy on the right, his great hair, made a point 2 years ago that Merrick Garland probably wasn't the best, most aggressive person to do this. But also, I want you to speak to this idea that the report also implies that the DOJ really only started moving because they were getting embarrassed by the January 6th committee meetings last year. It was the public, it was Congress doing the oversight that you were talking about that made them say, oh my gosh, Jesus is coming, I guess we should get busy.
Which is obvious. I mean, we said it in real time. Cassidy Hutchinson is the hero of the story. It's Cassidy Hutchinson that put the fear of God into the DOJ, into Merrick Garland, into Lisa Monaco, and made them act. But there's another kind of, I think, more hidden bad guy here who's getting away a little bit light. And that is, and if you look at that clip that we just played, what did I say? Where's the FBI? Jason, I cannot explain how FBI Director Chris Wray still has a job. Chris Wray botched the Brett Kavanaugh investigation, botched the Larry Nassar investigation. Let all of these people on January 6th just walk out scot-free. There were immeasurable resources that had to be spent recapturing the people that Chris Wray let walk free on January 6th. And now we see in this report that once again, in that interim from January 7th until Merrick Garland takes over in March 2021, who's basically in charge? It's Chris Wray, and he does nothing, right? I don't know what he has to do to lose a job. I mean, like, does he have to slap Chris Rock? Like, what does it actually take for Chris Wray to lose a job behind his stuff? Because he has not been a good FBI director based on any objective metric.
That is the most effective reference to emancipation that I have heard on Juneteenth. Thank you very much, Ellie Mistel and Paul Butler. Thank you so much for starting off the show, The ReidOut, tonight.